All right, welcome back to the next video. So in this video, we're going to talk more about strings in Java. We've already written some programs that deal with strings. You may have written a program where you get to enter your name, or maybe you get to enter a decision, like you're choosing the left door or the right door. But in this video, we're just going to talk a little more in detail about strings and the powers that they have. They actually can do string variables can do a lot more than just a regular int variable. So far in the course, we've discussed Java's primitive data types. Okay, so what is a data type? So it's when you make a variable like x or age, you need to define its data type when you first create the variable. So I'm talking about something like int x equals 7. Okay, so you're creating an integer variable in RAM and you are assigning it a value of 7. Now, what does that do in RAM? Well, I've got a little Word document here, and so in your computer's memory, that would create a little box called x, and I'm putting the number 7. Okay, again, that's if I had int x is assigned 7. So when the compiler hits this line, two things happen in RAM. A little box is created, a little storage space called x, that's the name of it, and we're putting the number 7 inside. Okay, so it's pretty simple. That's what the drawing looks like in RAM. Now, there are other types of variables, and they're called object data types. So we've already been using some, and they you'll know that they're object data types because they begin with a capital letter. So scanner, color, graphics, these are all object data types. The most popular object data type is string, and so we're going to focus in this video on the string data type. But there are many more, and there's hundreds and hundreds of object data types, and that's because you and I, as programmers, we are allowed to create our own object data types. You can create your own and then use them in your programs, and then create variables of that data type. So that's the process of creating your own object types. That's called object-oriented programming, and that's something that we really dive deeper into in the next course, in the grade 12 course. Okay, so let's talk about string variables. So I've created a little class. By the way, I have created a Unit 3, I created a new project. I just hit New Project, and I saved it to my desktop, and I called it Unit 3. So feel free to do the same thing. So my first class inside this project is called strings. So I'm just going to move this down for a second here. So I can create an int variable like this, but we can also create string variables like this. String x equals let's say hello. Okay. Now, this is the data type. This is the name of the variable, or we call it the identifier. And then this is the data. This is what we're going to put inside that variable. And this is called a string. So a string is really just a kind of a list of characters enclosed inside double quotes. All right. Now, what does this look like in RAM? So you need to know the difference. So if I said string x is assigned hello, this looks a little bit different in RAM. So instead of just one box, there's actually two boxes. So there's a little box. Actually, you know what? Let's call this y, because I've already used x. And we're not allowed to use the same variable in the same program. Okay, so I'm going to call this y. So there's a little box, and this little box is called a reference. All right, so you should know the name of this. This little box is called a reference, and it is going to be assigned or pointing to a larger box. And this larger box is called the object. And the object is what is actually storing the data hello. So these characters, this list of characters, is going to be stored inside this object. And then there's a little reference, and that's what's called y. So when you create the variable over here, you're giving a name to your variable. You're actually giving the name to the little reference, and this is pointing to the object. Okay. It seems a little bit confusing, and there are some computer science courses where the teacher may not even show you this distinction. They might just tell you that strings are just like int variables. But I think it's important to know this distinction between the reference and the object. Very soon we're going to have multiple objects, and you can have references that are pointing to different objects, or you can reassign a reference to point to a different object. And so it is important to know the difference between these two. Another thing that's very important is the position values. So every time you create a string, there are little position values that occur underneath each character. And I want you to think of a string as kind of like a row of lockers out in the hallway. And so these numbers at the bottom, these are just the numbers on your locker. And they are called index values. Okay, so these numbers are called indexes. Okay, or you might call them indices for plural. Okay, so these are the index values, and then the characters are basically the contents of your locker, like the thing that's inside that space. Okay, so you can kind of think of a string like a row of lockers and there's a character inside each locker. All right, you can kind of think of it that way. Okay, we'll come back to this picture. So going back to the code, I could then do something like system.out.println x. All right. So if I were to compile and run this, it literally just prints the contents of variable x, which is the string hello. Okay. Now you can do other things. You can even have a second string, hello there. Okay, and then you can do x plus y, and that will concatenate these two. So if I compile and run it, then it says hello there. Now, if I want to put a space, you can either just put a space here or a space here, or you can get a little creative and you can put a little tiny string with just one space inside of it. You can put a little literal string in between these string variables, and then that will also do the trick. Okay. Now, you cannot subtract strings, so I would not be able to put a minus. You can't multiply or divide or mod strings as well. So you can only concatenate strings together. Okay, you can even do something like this, string z equals scan.nextLine. And now, in order for that to work, I have to create a scanner class, or a scanner object, and then I need to import java.util.scanner. So we've all seen this. We should have seen this at this point. So this allows us to read in a string from the user, and then if I if I put z here instead of y, so if I run this, nothing is happening. Oh, because I have to go view. I have to force view the terminal. Okay, now I can enter fill, and then when I press enter, this string is going to be stored into the variable z. Okay, and then it prints hello fill, right? Because it's printing x, which is hello, and z, which is fill, because that's what I entered. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to simplify things a little bit. I'm going to get rid of the scanner. So I'm not going to enter a string. And I'm also going to just have one string in here. And I'm going to make the string a little bit longer. I'm going to make it typewriter. Okay, so if I go back to my my note here, I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to change this to the string typewriter. Change it to blue. Okay, so then automatically these indexes will appear. And I'll just put typewriter over here. Okay. So in RAM, we have this picture. Although, to be honest, I think we called it x in our code. So let's just scrap this thing here, and I'll call this x. Okay, and this will be x. Okay, so now this goes in line with the code. So I have a string reference called x that's pointing to an object storing the characters that form the word typewriter. Okay, and the indexes go from 0 to 9. So there are actually 10 characters here. Just keep that in mind. There are 10 letters, and the indexes always start at 0. Okay, so the indexes in this case go from 0 to 9. All right. So going back to my code, here we are. So the thing that makes strings so powerful is that not only can string variables store data, like ints and doubles and booleans and chars, but you can also call string methods. And I've got some code down here that talks about string methods. And there are a number of them. There's a whole bunch of them. We're probably not going to get to all of them in this video, but we'll get to the first few. So I'm going to remove this line here. And we're going to talk about some of these string methods. Now, the very first and kind of the easiest string method is called the .length method. All right, so what I can do here, so if I print x, hopefully you all know that's just going to print typewriter. But if you say x.length, bracket, bracket, then this command will give us back the length of that string, which we said was 10. So if I were to run this, this should print 10. Okay? Now, where would that be useful? Well, I don't know if you have ever created an account on a website and it asks you to choose a password, create a password. And a lot of times it gives you that warning, sorry, your password is too short. So for safety reasons, they want your password to be greater than 6 or 8 characters. So in that little piece of code, this command would definitely be in there. So it's going to check the length of the string that you inputted, and then it will ask you to re-enter a different password if the string didn't meet an appropriate length. Okay. So again, another example, like you could just use that right in an if statement. If x.length is less than 6, then you can print too short. Else whatever, password accepted. Okay, or whatever you want to do. So you can use these methods right inside an if statement if you want. Okay, so that's the first string method that you need to know about. It's called the .length method. You have to have these silly parentheses at the end. We kind of had the same thing when we did math.random. And when we do scan.nextInt, we have to put those brackets at the end, and that's because we're calling a method. All right. Now, what is a method? Let's just pause for a second. A method. This is a built-in Java command. So this comes with the Java language when you download it on your computer. So you can actually go into your files and go and navigate to the Java folder, and you will find a class called string. So there's actually a class called string that comes with the language, and you can open it up, and there are a whole bunch of they're called methods. So it's little chunks of code inside this class, and so we are actually calling this method. So we're causing this chunk of code to act. We're calling upon it to act, and then this code gives us back the length of this string. So that's what a method is. It's like a little portion of code that gives us some helpful information in return. Okay? All right, so let's do one more method, and this one is called charAt. This one's a little more interesting. So this method returns the char at the specified index position. Okay, so if I say system.out.println x.charAt3, need another bracket here. Okay, so what this method does is it it looks at this string, which by the way is typewriter, and it gives us back the index at position 3. I'm sorry, it gives us back the character at index 3. So if I go to my little drawing here, which character is at index 3? Well, here's index 0, 1, 2, 3. So the letter is E. The character would just be E at index 3. So if I were to run this, okay, and I play it, okay, we get 10. That's from our length that we still have up here. And then the second thing we get is E. So that's the character at index 3. Okay. So this prints E. All right, so just as a little quiz here, what would this give? X.char at 0. Well, remember, these little indexes start at position 0. So the very first character at index 0 is a T. And so that's going to print a T. What if I did system.out.println 9? Well, that is the very last index. So that looks like it's going to be the letter R. Okay, let's just check that. Compile, run. And yeah, ETR. Okay, and I'll do one more here. What if I did system.out.println x.char at 10? So what if I did something that was outside the range of indexes? You can see that there's no index 10 here. All right, so watch what happens. When I compile it, I don't get any syntax errors, but when I run this, the program crashes and it says string index out of bounds exception. So there's an error here, and it highlights my code and basically says, hey, you've gone out of bounds here. Okay, so this will give me an error, and I'm going to comment this line out. I'm just going to put 2 slashes at the beginning so that this line does not run. So now this will be ignored by the compiler. Okay. Now, in all of these cases, I'm printing the char at a specific value, but you don't have to do that. You could, if you wanted to, you could set up a variable like char z is assigned x.char at 5, whatever you want. Okay. So what does this line do? Well, it's going to do the right-hand side first. It's going to do this part first. So it's going to go get the character at index 5, which happens to be R, okay, lowercase r, and then it stores that into Z. Okay, and then you can do whatever you want with that. You can use it in an if statement. You could print it, whatever you want to do. All right, so we're going to practice using these 2 methods, length and charAt, and then in the next video, we're going to take a look at some other very useful string methods. Okay, bye for now.